The diamond-shaped station hung like a blade over the gas giant's swirling storms, its mirrored windows reflecting the violent beauty below. Inside the orbital offices of the Galactic Credit Consortium, the air hummed with the quiet power of those who controlled the galaxy's wealth. Captain Elias Voss stood at attention, his grey uniform stark against the iridescent chitin of the bankers surrounding him. His jaw was set, his hands clasped behind his back. The human delegation, 6 officers in total, stood in a tight formation, their boots planted firmly on the polished floor. They were outnumbered, outranked, and by every metric the galaxy cared about, outmatched. Director Xilthar's mandibles clicked as he scrolled through the holographic ledger floating before him. The Xiperian's exoskeleton gleamed under the stations, artificial light, his 4 arms moving with practiced precision. Behind him, Ambassador Lura of the Vorak Collective lounged in her seat, her violet scales shimmering with amusement. She sipped from a crystal goblet, her slitted eyes never leaving the humans. "The numbers do not lie, Captain Voss," Xilthar said, his voice a dry rasp. "Your species has failed to meet its financial obligations for 7 consecutive cycles." The hologram flickered, displaying a cascading list of human colonies, each marked with the consortium's crimson foreclosure sigil. The Galactic Credit Consortium cannot sustain such insolvency. Voss didn't flinch. "Director, our colonies are productive. Our trade agreements are worth less than the energy it takes to file them," Xilthar interrupted. His upper arms gestured toward the data, while the lower pair tapped impatiently against his thorax. "Your economic models are primitive. Your currency, unstable. Your people, unreliable." He leaned forward, his faceted eyes reflecting Voss' stony expression. "The consortium has voted. Your assets are being repossessed." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Consortium aides and junior bankers exchanged glances, their antennae twitching with barely concealed satisfaction. Lura set down her goblet with a soft clink. "A shame," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy, "but predictable. Your species always did overextend itself." Voss' fingers tightened behind his back. "Which assets?" Xilthar's mandibles spread in what passed for a smile among his kind. "All of them." The hologram expanded, swallowing the room in a web of red lines. Human colonies, mining outposts, research stations, even Earth's orbital docks. Every major holding, every foothold humanity had carved into the stars, now marked for seizure. "You can't be serious," said Lieutenant Chen, the youngest of Voss officers. Her voice wavered, just for a second. "Deadly serious," Xilthar replied. "The consortium's mercenary fleets are already en route to enforce the foreclosure." He tapped a final command into the hologram. "You have 30 cycles to vacate." Silence, then Voss laughed. It wasn't a loud sound, just a short, sharp exhale, as if Head heard a joke only he understood. Xilthar's antennae stiffened. Lura's fingers paused mid-reach for her drink. "Something amuses you, Captain?" the Xiperian asked. Voss shook his head. "No, Director, it's just 30 cycles." He tilted his head, meeting Xilthar's gaze without blinking. "That's generous." Lura's tail flicked. "You misunderstand, this isn't an offer. It's a decree." "Oh, I understand." Voss straightened his collar, the motion deliberate. "But you're making one mistake." Xilthar's mandibles twitched. "And what would that be?" "You think this is about money." Voss turned toward the exit, his officers falling in behind him. "It's not." The doors hissed open. "Then, what is it about?" Lura called after him. Voss didn't look back. "Ownership." The doors sealed behind him, cutting off the murmurs of the consortium's court. Outside, in the sterile hallway, Chen exhaled sharply. "Sir, they just declared war." Voss tapped his wristcom, activating a secured channel. "No, Lieutenant. They just declared bankruptcy." The screen flickered to life, displaying Admiral Carter's grim face. Behind her, The war room of the USN Iron Ledger buzzed with activity. "They took the bait?" Carter asked. Voss smiled. "Hook, line, and ledger." Carter nodded. "Then let's close the account." The transmission ended, somewhere in the depths of human space, hidden in the dark between stars. 1,000 ships powered on. Their transponder codes flickered to life, one after another, like lights on a balance sheet. USN foreclosure, USN repossession, USN final notice. The galaxy was about to learn the hard way. You didn't foreclose on humanity. Humanity foreclosed on you. The war room of the USN Iron Ledger hummed with suppressed energy, the air thick with the scent of ozone from flickering holographic displays. Admiral Naomi Carter stood motionless before the star map, her reflection fractured across a dozen red foreclosure markers blinking ominously over human systems. Each crimson pulse represented another world stolen, not by conquest, but by ink and ledger. Lieutenant Kale of the Vorak observers leaned against a console, his 4-fingered hands clasped behind his back. His obsidian carapace reflected the emergency lighting, the bioluminescent stripes along his shoulders pulsing in slow amusement. "Admiral," he said, his voice smooth as polished stone. "I must admit, watching your species learn the price of insolvency is educational." Carter didn't turn. Her fingers traced the trajectory lines of consortium mercenary fleets, each one a dagger aimed at human space. "We paid our dues, Kale, every credit. On time." "Ah, but interest compounds." Kale's mandibles twitched. "Your colonies expanded faster than your economy could support, a classic overextension." He gestured to the hologram. "Now the galaxy collects." A junior officer, Ensign Park, burst through the doors, his tablet clutched like a lifeline. "Admiral, new reports from Tau Ceti, phase Empyrean enforcers have landed. They're evicting civilians, I know." Carter finally turned, her eyes locking onto Kale's. "Tell me, Lieutenant, how many Vorak ships are observing this foreclosure?" Kale's stripes flickered yellow. "Surprise. A neutral party cannot interfere with lawful. Cut the script." Carter tapped her console. The hologram shifted, revealing hidden signatures lurking behind gas giants and asteroid belts. 12 Vorak cruisers, coincidentally matching the consortium's seizure patterns. She leaned in. "You're not here to watch. You're here to clean up." The Vorak's carapace rattled, a nervous tick. "Even if true, Admiral, what will you do? Your fleet is scattered. Your allies have abandoned you. The consortium's mercenaries outgun you 3-1. Carter smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. She swiped open a classified file labeled Contingency, Debt Cancellation. The hologram dissolved into a storm of equations and schematics, ship movements, reactor signatures, financial trails snaking across the galaxy. Kale's stripes flared crimson. What is this? An audit. Carter zoomed in on a transaction log. See this, a loan from the consortium to the Vorak High Command, dated 3 days before your neutral observers deployed. She flicked to another entry. And this, a Xiltharian arms shipment paid for by consortium funds, delivered to mercenaries now holding our colonies. The Vorak's claws dug into the console. These records are sealed. Not anymore. Carter closed the file. You think this is about money? She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. No, this is about ownership. Alarms blared. Ensign Park stiffened. Admiral, incoming transmission from Tau Ceti, Fey Commander Rivas is signaling. Carter activated the feed. Static resolved into the grizzled face of Commander Rivas, his uniform streaked with dust. Behind him, Xiltharian shock troops in gleaming exo-armor marched through the colonist streets. Admiral, Rivas said, his voice calm. I've ordered the evacuation. Gave us 30 minutes. Kale's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. As expected, you'll comply, of course. Rivas ignored him. Requesting final authorization, ma'am. Carter didn't hesitate, granted. The feed cut. Kale's stripes flickered wildly. Authorization for what? Outside the viewports, the stars seemed to hold their breath. Then, a pulse of light from Tau Ceti face surface. The colony's fusion reactor detonated in a controlled blast, the shockwave rippling through the Xiltharian forces. The hologram updated instantly. Foreclosure marker over Tau Ceti. Faye winked out. Kale staggered. You destroyed your own colony? Correction. Carter straightened her jacket. We repossessed it. She tapped the console again. Across the hologram, 100 other foreclosure markers began flashing, each one linked to a human colony, each one now broadcasting the same reactor signature. You leveraged our worlds, Carter said softly, but you forgot we built them. She turned to Ensign Park. Signal, the fleet. Operation Ledger's End is live. As Park scrambled to obey, Kale lunged for the comms. You don't understand. The consortium will... Carter yanked the panel from his grasp. Oh, we understand perfectly. She leaned in, her breath frosting against his carapace. Tell your masters this. Humanity doesn't beg for mercy. We foreclose. Outside, the USN Iron Ledger's engines roared to life, its weapons charging for war. The dust swirled in thick clouds as the Xiltharian drop. Ships touched down on Tau Ceti Faybank. Sergeant Virix stepped out first, his polished exo-armor gleaming under the dim red sun. Behind him, 24 shock troops fanned out, their pulse rifles humming with energy. The colony's air was stale, tinged with the acrid smell of abandoned mining equipment. Commander Rivas watched from the shadow of a half-collapsed refinery. His hands were empty, his uniform frayed at the edges. The rest of his squad stood behind him, their faces hard. Civilians huddled in doorways, their eyes flickering between the humans and the armored aliens. Virix's mandibles clicked as he scanned the scene. By order of the Galactic Credit Consortium, he announced, his voice amplified by his helmet. This facility and all its assets are hereby repossessed. You have 1 hour to vacate. Rivas stepped forward. The Xiltharians tensed, rifles rising. He didn't flinch. You're late, he said. Virix tilted his head. Explain. Rivas gestured to the empty streets. We've been packing for weeks. Knew you were coming. A ripple of laughter passed through the shock troops. Virix raised a clawed hand, silencing them. Then you understand compliance is your only option. Kneel, and you will be relocated humanely. Rivas smirked. Funny word, humane doesn't mean the same thing to you, does it? Virix's armor whirred as he took a step closer. Do not test my patience, Softkin. The consortium does not negotiate with debtors. Rivas glanced back at his squad, then at the civilians. A child peeked out from behind her mother's legs. He met her eyes for a second before turning back to Virix. You want this rock? Fine, but you'll take it our way. Virix's rifle snapped up. Last warning. Rivas didn't move. You ever hear of a controlled demolition, banker? The ground trembled. At first, it was just a vibration, a low, grinding hum beneath their boots. Then the tremors grew stronger. Dust rained from the rooftops. The Xiltharians staggered, their disciplined formation breaking as the street cracked beneath them. Virix snarled. What have you done? Rivas didn't answer. He just watched as the colony's fusion reactor, buried deep beneath the settlement, reached critical overload. The Xiltharians turned, scrambling for their ships. Too late. The explosion wasn't fire and light, it was pressure. The ground heaved upward, swallowing the shock troops in a wave of shattered rock and molten metal. The refinery collapsed inward, then erupted outward, burying the drop. Ships under tons of debris. Rivas and his squad didn't run. They stood there, watching as the consortium's enforcers vanished under the avalanche. The child behind him gasped. One Zephyrian survived. Virix clawed his way free of the rubble, his armor cracked, one limb mangled. He dragged himself toward Rivers, hissing, You burned it all." Rivers crouched beside him. "No, we balanced the books." Virix's mandibles twitched. "This changes nothing. The consortium will send more. They'll erase you." Rivers stood. "Tell them something for me." He turned, nodding to his squad. They moved quickly, herding the civilians toward the waiting evacuation transports. "Tell them Earth doesn't default." He kicked a chunk of rubble onto Virix's chest. "We foreclose." The last thing Virix saw was the human transports lifting off, their engines flaring against the smoke-filled sky. Then the secondary charges detonated, and the colony vanished in a fireball that lit up Tau Cetis nightside for a full minute. 3 light, years away, aboard the USN Iron Ledger. Admiral Carter watched the sensor feed. The blast registered as a minor seismic event. She allowed herself a small smile. Lieutenant Kyle, the Vorak observer, frowned at the data. "You sacrificed an entire colony." Carter didn't look away from the screen. "We sacrificed nothing. That rock was mined out 6 months ago." Kale's frills flushed purple. "Then why?" Carter finally turned. "Because now they know." She tapped the console, pulling up the next foreclosure notice on the list. "Humanity doesn't surrender assets. We write them off." The Vorak swallowed hard for the first time. He looked afraid. Carter leaned closer. "Tell me, Lieutenant, how many more colonies do you think the consortium will risk losing?" Kale had no answer. Outside the viewport, the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere among them, the next battle in the ledger of war was already being calculated. The foreclosure drifted silently in the shadow of the gas giant's rings, its running lights dark. Captain Elias Voss watched the massive diamond-shaped station of the Galactic Credit Consortium through the bridge's viewport. The station gleamed like a jewel, its polished surfaces reflecting the swirling storms below. "Status?" Voss asked, his voice low. Lieutenant Chen adjusted the tactical display. "Shield harmonics still masking us. They haven't seen us yet." Voss nodded. The foreclosure wasn't built for stealth. It was a refitted battleship, its hull still bearing the scars of 6 blockade runs. But it didn't need to be invisible, just unnoticed long enough. "Open a channel to the consortium," Voss ordered. The comm officer hesitated. "Direct to Director Xilthar." Voss smirked. "Oh, hell, want to hear this." The screen flickered to life, revealing the chitinous face of the Zephyrian banker. Xilthar's mandibles twitched in irritation. "Captain Voss, your species' defiance is as tedious as your credit score." Voss leaned forward. "Director, we've come to settle our debt." Xilthar's ocular ridges lifted in mock surprise. "With what? Your colonies are forfeit. Your fleets are scattered. You have nothing." Voss didn't blink. "You're right. We don't have money. But we do have collateral." A pause. Then Xilthar's laughter echoed through the bridge, a sound like grinding metal. "Collateral. What could humans possibly offer that?" Voss cut him off. "Open your docking bay doors. We'll deliver it personally." The channel closed. Lieutenant Chen swallowed hard. "Sir, if they scan us, they won't," Voss said. "Bankers don't get their hands dirty. They'll let their automated systems do the work." The foreclosure lurched forward, its engines flaring as it angled toward the station. The consortium's docking bay yawned open, a gaping maw of polished alloy. Inside, the bay was eerily empty. No guards, no enforcers. Just the cold, sterile glow of automated loaders waiting to process whatever collateral the humans had brought. Voss keyed the shipwide comm. "All hands, brace for impact." The foreclosure slammed into the docking clamps, its hull screeching as it came to a stop. The cargo bay doors hissed open. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the first warhead rolled out. It was an old Mark IV thermonuclear device, its casing scratched and worn. It clattered onto the deck, followed by another and another. By the time the station's alarms began to wail, there were already 24 warheads scattered across the bay. Xilthar's voice shrieked over the comm. "Voss, what is this?" Voss leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "Collateral, Director. Every nuclear warhead Earth still owns, all wired to a single dead man's switch." He tapped his chest where a small biometric sensor blinked steadily. "My heart stops. They all go off." Silence, then, slowly. Xilthar's voice returned, this time edged with something new. "Fear. You're bluffing." Voss smiled. "Try me." The station's internal comms erupted into chaos. Voices overlapped. Zephyrian, Vorak, a dozen other species, all screaming about radiation alarms, about the impossibility of containment, about the sheer insanity of what the humans had just done. Voss let them panic for a full minute before speaking again. "Now, let's renegotiate our terms." Xilthar's mandibles clicked furiously. "You'll die with us." "Probably," Voss admitted. "But here's the thing, Director. We knew we couldn't beat you in a fair fight, so we didn't bring one." He gestured to the warhead still tumbling from the cargo hold. "We brought banking." The bridge crew exchanged glances. Lieutenant Chen muttered, "Sir, that doesn't actually make sense." Voss shrugged. "It will when they surrender." And then, as if on cue, the station's defense turrets powered down. The docking bay's force fields flickered and died. Xilthar's voice, when it came, was hollow. "What do you want?" Voss leaned forward. "Everything." The channel stayed open as the consortium's board of directors scrambled to comply. Transfers of ownership, rescinded foreclosure notices, entire star systems signed over in trembling script. And through it all, the warheads kept coming. By the time the foreclosure's cargo bay was empty, the station's docking area looked like a scrap heap of apocalyptic weaponry. Voss stood, stretching. "Well, that's that." Lieutenant Chen stared at him. "Sir, we're still on the ship. If they call our bluff." Voss patted the console. "Oh, the dead man's switch is real, but the warheads." He grinned. "Most of them are dummies. Just enough fissile material to set off the scanners." Chen's jaw dropped. "You bluffed them." "Not entirely." Voss tapped the sensor on his chest. "This one's real, and it's linked to the real warheads we hid in the gas giant's rings." He glanced at the station outside. They just didn't need to know that. The bridge crew erupted into laughter. On the view screen, the consortium station hung silently, its gleaming facade now marred by the knowledge that humanity hadn't just played their game. They'd changed it. Voss keyed the comm one last time. "You wanted collateral." His grin was all teeth. "Here's all of it." Lieutenant Kale's third eye twitched as the tactical display flickered. The Vorak homeworld's defense fleet moved in perfect formation, their silver-hulled dreadnoughts forming an impenetrable sphere around the capital. His mandibles clicked in satisfaction. "Admiral Carter, your little rebellion ends here. The consortium's mercenaries have you outnumbered 3-1. Admiral Naomi Carter didn't look up from her console. The bridge of the USN Iron Ledger hummed with quiet intensity, her crew working with mechanical precision. "Lieutenant, how much do you know about human accounting systems?" Kale's crest feathers ruffled. "This is no time for double-entry bookkeeping," Carter continued, tapping a command sequence. "Every transaction recorded twice assets and liabilities." The star map zoomed out, revealing hundreds of new contacts blinking to life across Vorak space. "You only saw one side of our ledger." The first distress call came from the mining belt. Unidentified vessels emerging from asteroids. There, the transmission cut off as the USN Repossession decloaked, its railguns already firing. Kale's data tablet clattered to the deck. Impossible, our scans showed nothing. Carter's smile was colder than space. You audited our fleet manifests, but humans have been hiding assets since the first tax collector walked into a barn. Across the system, more ships activated, refitted freighters with hidden weapon ports. Derelict hulls suddenly powering up, their transmitters broadcasting a single repeating signal. The Vorak communications officer screamed, "Admiral, they're transmitting our financial records. Every bribe, every backroom deal with the consortium. It is being broadcast galaxy-wide." Kale's claws dug into the command chair. "You wouldn't dare. The economic chaos." "Funny thing about humans," Carter said, nodding to her weapons officer. "We'll burn our own house down to smoke out the rats." The Iron Ledger's main battery charged with a whine that vibrated through the hull. "Your economy was built on stolen collateral. Time to pay the piper." On screen, the USN Liquidator broke formation, its massive antenna array pulsing with data streams. Bank codes, transfer records, even the secret accounts of Vorak oligarchs. All flowed into the galactic net. Stock markets on 100 worlds began crashing within seconds. Kale watched in horror as rebellion erupted across his homeworld. The lower castes, seeing how their rulers had profited from human suffering, turned on their masters. Defense fleet ships began powering down weapons, their crews mutinying. "You leveraged our extinction," Carter said, watching the chaos unfold. "Now watch us leverage yours." She opened a fleet-wide channel. "All human vessels, execute protocol red ledger." The repossession fired first, not kinetic rounds or plasma, but specialized EMP warheads that detonated across the Vorak financial district. Server farms melted, stock exchanges went dark. The economic heart of the consortium's power bled out in seconds. Kale collapsed to his knees. You didn't come to conquer." Carter adjusted her uniform. "Conquest is expensive. This," she gestured to the collapsing markets on screen. "This is just good business." A new alert flashed. The Zeperian homeworld was experiencing identical financial attacks. Funny how quickly neutral parties choose sides when their bank accounts start vanishing. The bridge crew cheered as another wave of ships appeared. Not human, but Tarkelian and Bryn, former consortium members, now turning on their masters. Their transmissions echoed through the speakers. "Recognizing human authority, ceasing all hostile actions." Kale's voice was a whisper. "You didn't beat our fleet. You didn't even fight our fleet." Carter finally turned to face him. "Why waste bullets bankrupting your enemies?" She tapped the final command. Across the galaxy, every human ship's transmitters switched to a new message, the complete terms of surrender, already signed by 3 of the consortium's founding species. The Vorak have 24 hours to sign after that. She nodded to the weapons officer. "We start foreclosing on planets." As Kale was dragged away, the communications officer grinned. "Admiral, the Bryn are offering their entire fleet as collateral against their war debts." Carter checked the figures. "Tell them we'll accept, at 20% interest." She leaned back, watching the dominoes fall. "After all, we're bankers now." The boardroom of the Galactic Credit Consortium had been designed to inspire awe, polished obsidian floors, towering viewports overlooking the gas giant below, furniture carved from asteroid gemstones. Now it was a ruin, cracks spider-webbed across the windows from nearby explosions. The scent of burning circuitry mixed with the acrid fear, sweat of a dozen alien species. Director Xilthar pressed his chitinous back against the wall as human marines fanned through the shattered doorway. Their boots crunched on broken glass. Their rifles stayed leveled. Not a single shot had been fired here. They hadn't needed to. Ambassador Lura's frilled neck trembled as she raised her hands. You can't do this," she stammered. The Federation Charter, Captain Elias Voss, stepped forward, his grey uniform streaked with soot. He tossed a datapad onto the conference table. It slid to a stop in front of Xilthar. Sign it. The Zeperian banker's mandibles twitched as he scanned the document. His eye stalks jerked upward. This is, you're seizing our assets, our entire reserve holdings? Voss didn't blink. Call it a debt restructuring. Across the room, one of the other directors, a gelatinous Quillan, let out a bubbling shriek. We'll be ruined. Our species rely on those reserves. A Marine shifted her rifle. The Quillan fell silent. Lura's claws scraped the table as she leaned forward. How? She whispered. How did you do this? We had mercenary fleets, blockades. You had no navy. Voss smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. You made one mistake, Ambassador. You thought we'd play by your rules. Xilthar's exoskeleton rattled. The dead man's switch on those warheads. That was a bluff. It had to be. No species would. Would what? Voss interrupted. Destroy ourselves to take you with us. Funny, we've been doing that for centuries. He tapped the datapad. Sign, or we reactivate the switch. The Vorak ambassador's frills flushed crimson. You're insane, the radiation would. Kill everyone in this system. Voss finished. Yeah, we know. Silence. Xilthar's claw trembled as he reached for the stylus. The other directors watched, their various limbs shaking. None moved to stop him. Lura's voice cracked. You planned this from the beginning. Voss didn't deny it. You foreclosed on our colonies. We foreclosed on you. The datapad beeped as Xilthar's biometric signature locked in. Across the galaxy, trillions of credits, mineral rights, shipyards, entire planetary trade routes, flipped ownership in an instant. One of the human Marines chuckled. Interest's a bitch, huh? Lura sank into her chair. You'll never get away with this. The Federation will... The Federation. Voss cut her off. He tapped his earpiece. Admiral, you're on speaker. Admiral Carter's voice crackled through the room's surviving audio system. Vorak High Command just surrendered. Their defense fleet mutinied when we leaked those financial records. Turns out their soldiers didn't appreciate being paid in stolen human lives. Xilthar made a sound like a crushed insect. You knew we funded their military expansion. Carter's laugh was ice. We audit everything. Director, even your black budgets. Voss picked up the signed datapad. Oh, and one more thing. He nodded to a Marine, who slammed a second device onto the table, a small holoprojector. It flickered to life, displaying a star map. Lura's frills went pale. Those are consortium vault worlds, Voss confirmed. Every one, and right now human ships are parked in their orbit, just like we parked the foreclosure at your front door. He leaned in. Try to reverse this, please. The Quillan director made a wet, choking noise. Xilthar's eye stalks drooped. What happens now? Voss straightened his uniform. Now, he turned toward the broken viewport, where the first human relief ships were already docking at the consortium's shattered stations. Now we rebuild with your money. Lura whispered the question they were all thinking. Why go this far? Voss paused at the doorway. He didn't look back. Because you forgot one rule, he said. Never foreclose on someone who built the bank. The Marines followed him out, leaving the galaxy's richest beings in the ruins of their own greed. The wreckage of the Galactic Credit Consortium's empire smoldered across 100 star systems. Admiral Naomi Carter stood on the observation deck of the USN Iron Ledger, watching as the first human freighters docked with what had once been the consortium's crown jewel, the central vault station. Its diamond-shaped hull was cracked open like an egg, its precious contents now being inventoried by teams of human accountants in tactical gear. Lieutenant Kale, his Vorak carapace still bearing scorch marks from the final battle, shuffled beside her. You planned this from the beginning, he said, his voice hollow. Carter didn't look at him. No. We improvised. She tapped a command into her wrist display, and the holographic star map between them flickered to life. Red foreclosure markers had been replaced with blue human sigils. You just never understood what our real assets were. On Tau Ceti, the mining colony's ruins were already being cleared. Commander Rivas, his uniform sleeves rolled up to the elbows, directed a team of engineers and former consortium laborers, Ziperian, Vorak, even a few Ceruleans, as they hauled debris from the reactor site. A Ziperian worker paused, his mandibles twitching nervously. Why are you rebuilding, after what we did? Rivas wiped sweat from his brow. Because we don't waste resources. He tossed the alien a water canteen. Including people, back on the vault station, Captain Elias Voss strode through the shattered remains of Director Xilthar's office. The once pristine chitin of the Ziperian banker was now dull with stress, his forelimbs trembling as he clutched the datapad Voss had given him. This is extortion, Xilthar hissed. Voss leaned against the cracked viewport, the gas giant storm swirling below. No, extortion is when you take something by force. He tapped the datapad. This is a contract, one you're going to honor. Ambassador Lura, her Vorak pride stripped away, sat slumped in a corner. How? She whispered. How did you turn our own systems against us? Voss smiled. You built an empire on debt, we just called it in. Across the galaxy, human ships patrolled former consortium territories, not as conquerors, but as lenders. The USN Repossession hovered over the Vorak homeworld, its transmitters broadcasting the same financial records that had shattered their government's legitimacy. The USN Liquidator oversaw the redistribution of seized assets to starving colonies. And the USN Final Notice sat parked in high orbit over Cententrum, its guns silent but its message clear. On Earth, the first intergalactic economic summit was underway. Admiral Carter stood before representatives of 100 species, the consortium's broken sigil displayed on a screen behind her. The old system failed you, she said. It was designed to. A Ziperian delegate raised a quivering limb. And yours won't. Carter's smile was razor thin. Oh, it will. But with us, you'll always know how. She pressed a button, and the screen changed to a live feed of human engineers helping rebuild a Vorak city. The terms are simple. You pay your debts, we pay ours, and everyone gets a fair shake. In the ruins of the central vault, Xilthar stared at the human workers cataloguing his former wealth. One of them, a young woman with grease smeared on her face, noticed his gaze. Don't worry, she said, hefting a crate of precious metals. We'll put it to better use than you did. On the bridge of the Iron Ledger, Kale watched as the last of the consortium's flags was replaced with Earth's blue and white banner. What now? He asked. Carter exhaled, long and slow. Now, she turned to face the stars. Now we get to work. The galaxy had learned the hard way. Humanity didn't lose wars. It audited them. And as the first human-led trade ships began moving between former enemy systems, Carter's final transmission echoed across every comm channel. Welcome, she said, her voice carrying the weight of 1,000 battles, to the human interest rate.